right. Welcome to This Week in Mediaocrity, where we present you with all the best in the worst of the media. I'm your host, Joel Foster, and this has officially been the longest month in our nation's history. Our Commander-in-Chief has trumped up his attacks on the media, developing a hate that's only met by his dislike for Rosie O'Donnell, Kristen Stewart, and pretty much any woman who wants to be treated as a human being. Because as we know, the media represents the thing Trump hates most, telling the truth. It continued today when it was reported that the New York Times, Politico, BBC, and CNN were not allowed into Press Secretary Sean Spicer's daily press briefing. But it's not about who was kept out, but who was left in. Conservative sites such as Fox News, Breitbart, The Washington Times, and One America News Network were allowed to pass through the whitest, dullest velvet rope imaginable. This comes after it was reported that last week that Gateway Pundit, a site that is to news what Mr. T is to music. I didn't know much about Gateway Pundit, so I spent the last week checking out what they had to say. And they revealed a troubling trend in these kinds of sites, which is painting Muslims as dangerous to our society. Here's one example. Gateway Pundit wrote a story about a Saudi Arabian couple from Corpus Christi, Texas, who left his kid in a car for 45 minutes while they saw a movie. According to the story, the police didn't charge the man because of cultural reasons, and that it's normal behavior in Saudi society. Of course, the comments boards lit up with people furious of how this guy wasn't held to American law, and how this is an example of how Sharia law is creeping forward and will soon take over our legal system. But something struck me funny about the story. This happened in Corpus Christi, Texas. After all, not a place where you think Muslim tolerance. It might have been maybe a bit more believable if it was in LA or Boston or New York, but this is Texas, a place where they've turned racism into an art form. So what was the real story? Okay, well, it turns out the local news ran a correction days after the original story ran, even before Gateway Pundit took the original story and ran with it. In the correction, the Corpus Christi police says that the police spokesman was wrong about the reasons for why the couple was not charged, and that the police department is investigating the case. But Gateway Pundit must have forgot to include this bit. But it's just one example of how Muslim culture is misrepresented by the media. And sometimes it doesn't even need to be Muslims, but people we think are Muslims because of their headwear. For example, Sikhs, a religious organization originating in India. A religion originating in India are often mistaken for Muslims, even though they don't identify with being Muslim or Hindu. When we see a guy wearing a turban like this is a Sikh we're talking about, not a Muslim. But this hasn't kept our media from misidentifying them. We might not have noticed, but they have. The Times of India outlined various articles in the US media about the Muslim ban that use pictures of Sikhs to illustrate their point. I get that we might not think it's a big deal, but confusing Sikh headwear with Muslims is like comparing the Pope's hat to a Pastafarian colander. But it isn't just a little mistake in the media, it has real effects. For example, a naked man who was high on meth broke into a Sikh temple last March in Washington. Looking around, he saw religious symbols and thought that he discovered an ISIS hideout. He was caught on camera picking 2 swords off the wall and then began to trash the place. Besides being probably the funniest security footage ever recorded, it's also a dangerous example of what happens when people misunderstand others' faith, especially when they're high on meth. So you'd think the Sikhs would be pissed off, right? People incorrectly stereotyping their religion. So let's listen to a robotic woman tell us how angry they got.
Sikh temples opened doors to Lake Oroville evacuees. Members of the Northern California Sikh community gave Lake Oroville evacuees what they needed most over the past few days, a place to stay. We announced that if anybody needs help, medical help, or anything, we are open, said Ranjit Singh, the manager of the Gurudwara Sahib Sikh temple in West Sacramento, California. Singh had said his temple has 2 large halls that can sleep about 400 people. People started to come here Sunday night and more than 200 people were here, he said. There were about 100 people at the temple on Tuesday. We have so many from Sikh community, and white community, and the Black and Mexican communities also, he said.
That's right, they're so angry that the Sikhs are housing people impacted by the Lake Oroville dam break in California, most of them white people. But what are they really up to? It's obviously a recruitment tool used as a psyops operation by the Islamists and globalists. We've got the documents to prove it. But to get back to the Gateway Pundit, as I said before, I'm up for different types of media. But it's no better to have all liberal media than to have all conservative media. We want different, not opposed media systems. Sites like Gateway Pundit don't give you accurate views on Muslims and Sikhs, people who often we don't meet. So we have to rely on these sources for our information on who Muslims and Sikhs are. So the best solution I can give you is get out there and meet Muslims, Sikhs, and all the rest. They're in your community, whether you know it or not. Attend one of their events, volunteer to help out. It's much better news than you're ever going to get from Gateway Pundit. Thanks for watching. I'm Joel Foster, and I'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.